Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kunal Gulati, and I am Chief Manager at Export Import Bank of India. It is a pleasure to welcome you all at this masterclass on overview of latest notifications for exporters and importers. It is indeed encouraging to see a large number of participants joining us for the webinar today. I just want to present a few logistics before we begin. Currently, all participants are in a listen-only mode. Today's webinar will have a presentation on the topic. If you have any questions or comments that you would like to share, feel free to send them to us through the question and answer tab on your screen. We will respond to the comments or the questions after the presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the sixth in a series of webinars which will be organized by Exim Bank. As you may be aware, it is in its endeavor to promote and facilitate India's trade and investment. Exim Bank creates a platform for discussion on topical issues pertaining to international trade, Indian and global economy, and policy changes. Here, let me mention to you about a new initiative of Exim Bank to boost Indian exports. As most of you would know that to improve the overall economic performance of Indian economy, a number of measures are being taken by the government of India, and some of them are towards increasing exports for higher economic activity and employment generation. In the budget, Union Budget 2020, a new scheme was announced for companies in various sectors which were successful domestically but not in the export markets. This initiative is named as Ubharte Sitare Program. The program, which will be operationalized by Exim Bank of India, will identify Indian companies that are future champions with good export potential. The Ubharte Sitare program proposes to diagnose the hurdles and constraints of identified enterprises and assist them in their growth and export strategies through a mix of structured support. The nature of support would cover both financial and advisory services through investments in equity or equity-like instruments, debt at competitive rates and elongated tenors, and technical assistance including advisory services, grants, and soft loans. The Ubharte Sitare program aims at building a set of globally competitive companies in India over the next 3 to 5 years for supporting expansion in exports, economic growth, and employment generation. Exim Bank of India will be organizing another webinar at 3 p.m. on 5th of June to further share details of this program. Ladies and gentlemen, we are currently living in unprecedented times. The COVID-19 pandemic has adversely impacted not only our lives, but also business, economy, and trade. Efforts are being undertaken by the government and trade promotion bodies to reduce the impact of pandemic on international trade. Moreover, there has been an influx of information since the beginning of the lockdown. Various circulars and notifications have been issued by several ministries and agencies of the government on matters pertaining to export documentation, digitization, restriction on certain export and import items, and approval mechanisms. Exim Bank's masterclass on overview of latest notifications for exporter and importers shall endeavor to encapsulate all the relevant notifications in light of the pandemic and help exporters make informed decisions for business continuity. The masterclass will be followed by an online live chat to address the queries and challenges being faced by the exporters and importers. Ladies and gentlemen, let me now introduce you to our speaker for today's webinar, Mr. Mihir Shah. He is a consultant and advisor on issues related to foreign trade policy, GST, FEMA, RBI, customs, excise, and other allied subjects related to export and import business. As a trainer, Mr. Shah provides training in the field of international business, covering topics related to setting up of a business, marketing, government incentives, and trade agreements. He holds an MBA in International Business from Sikkim Manipal University and is a Bachelor of Law and Commerce from the University of Mumbai. He has been associated with various associations, chambers of commerce, trade promotion councils, and institutes as a faculty and speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, we sincerely hope this platform provides clarity on the notifications issued pertaining to export business. We look forward to your questions and also your feedback for today's session. Thank you, and I now invite Mr. Mihir Shah to kindly begin the session.
Very good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Kunal, for this wonderful introduction and a welcome on this masterclass. It's great to be back with Exim Bank, and really, it's appreciable that they are conducting a series of these kind of masterclass. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome on this afternoon once again, and we are going to look forward to the various circulars and notifications which have impacted you as an exporter and importer. Before I move and jump into the presentations right away, let me give you some understanding and a perspective. The current situation is something that nobody in the world was prepared for. Nobody who had vision, planning, execution, resources had ever imagined this kind of situation, pandemic, across the globe. The firefighting or the out of the box ideas, out of the box resources, out of the box actions have taken place, whether it is in form of lockdown, whether it is in form of some strategical moves. Whatever has been best for the situation has been taken by various governments. In view of these unprecedented moves, there is an economy and business which gets affected. As an exporter and importer, we get affected not only by our economy and our processes, we also are dependent on our buyers and suppliers processes and economic impact. So for us as an exporter and importer, the challenge is multifold, or the challenge is larger. To our rescue, to our advantage, and to our support, Government of India has come out by various departments and various organizations, various notifications and circulars guiding and assisting exporters and importers to either procedurally relax the process or giving them relaxation and benefit in terms of various provisions. This is a very welcome and a very bold advantage the exporter has, because he can then concentrate on reviving and working on the economy and the business which he's got affected. My entire aim to give you an update is what is relevant to you as an exporter and importer with the current perspective. So without further delay, let me quickly share you the presentation and we can move further. So we start with looking at various incentive, various notifications and circulars which are part of these changes. Before I move on to the various individual cases, let me tell you which are the agencies involved. We are talking about the DGFT, which comes under Ministry of Commerce and Industry, which is the big chunk of the changes. We are talking about Customs and GST, which is Ministry of Finance. Then you have the Director General of Shipping, which comes under Ministry of Shipping, the RBI, Government of India, and the other agencies which are involved in the entire business logistics channel of export and import. Let me begin and start with the most important and the most prominent out of it is DGFT, the one agency which formulates the foreign trade policy of India, the one agency which is the probably one of the macro controller of the India's foreign trade. As you all will be aware that the foreign trade policy which is been issued by the government is for a period of 5 years. The current policy which was in place was policy issued on 1st April 2015 and was due to expire on 31st of March 2020. So effectively, foreign trade policy was called FTP 1520. Considering the lockdown, the unprecedented pandemic, what has happened is that the policy or a call has been taken where the policy has been extended, the as it is the same policy which was due for a renewal, and a new set of procedures and policy would come actually from 1st of April. It has been now extended, the existing policy and the procedure has been extended for a period of 1 year, that is up to 31st of March 2021, giving all the exporters and importers a relaxed atmosphere to work on something which they are already aware and known to. to. Friends, I believe, yes, one of the, let me assure you, the link to the presentations and will be shared, and the presentation copy will be shared. So you do not worry on that. We can just go through the entire process. So the FTP, the foreign trade policy, and the procedure is, and I be very clear, is extended for a period of 1 year, which is up to 31st of March 2021, in spite it being for 5 years. Now we talk about the nitty-gritties in the policy, and one of the most talked about discussion or the incentive or the benefit is the scheme called MEIS, Merchandise Export from India scheme. Before giving you the details, I want to put forth the context with which it is there and certain specifics which has already happened before COVID, because then you will be realizing the context with the changes which has happened. First and foremost, let us understand, MEIS is a promotional scheme. It was a scheme to promote India's export. The scheme had a incentive rate of 2%, 3%, and 5% for various products depending upon the HSN code. In December of 2017, that is just after GST being rolled out, department increased for certain specific HSN code benefit by 2 more additional percent. So then you had 2%, certain cases you had 2 plus 2, 4, 3 to 5, 5 to 7. So there was this scheme which was there. In 2018, US objected to the MEIS and certain other schemes of the government of India, and it took it to WTO. WTO, the case was taken up, and we were told that yes, the scheme is non-compliant to WTO norms, and we have to close the scheme and to shut the scheme along with the other schemes within a stipulated time. India has already filed an appeal to this to the WTO, which means the matter is sub judice. However, as a government, we've also looked forward to modify the scheme or to come up with a scheme which is more WTO compliant. In meanwhile, on 7th of December 2019, department has already taken a call that the additional 2% which was announced in December 2017 would be stopped effective of 31st of December 2019. That means from 1st January 2020, you would get only the original 2, 3 or 5% as notified under the original scheme. Another scheme which was announced and introduced through Textile Ministry for specific HSN code for specific products of apparel and made-ups under chapter 61, 62, 63, which was moved from customs under ROSL to Department of Commerce DGFT by the name ROSCTL. That scheme was made into effect from 7th March 2019, thus eliminating or stopping the MEIS benefit for those HSN products. This understanding is given so that you understand that prior to COVID, we were in a situation where the MEIS was 2, 3, and 5 only from 1st of January 2020, and there was no MEIS for chapter 61, 62, 63 because it was under ROSCTL. Typically, because the policy has extended, the MEIS should also extend. However, we are aware, and as I agreed and as I mentioned, that we are thinking of a new scheme called as the RODTEP, Remission of Duties and Taxes on Export Product, RODTEP, in lieu of MEIS. So there was this confusion. In fact, just just at the end before the lockdown, the cabinet of government of India has also approved the RODTEP scheme. However, just to give a clarity on what is the current position, the department has issued a trade notice which clarifies that the MEIS scheme for the various HSN codes will be available up to 31st of December 2020, or it will be available until a RODTEP rate has been notified for any HSN code prior to 31st of December. So until 31st of December or before, when ROTTEP rates are announced. So if ROTTEP rate is announced, then MEIS will go away. Until that, it will be there. So until 31st of December 2020, you are going to get MEIS benefit, or until the ROTTEP rates are announced. What is ROTTEP? How it will work? What will be the procedure? We are yet to get the confirmation and the details and the fine print. The department is working with Ministry of Commerce and Ministry of Finance, and together they will notify it separately. We should wait rather than contemplating and looking at if what happens. So let us wait for the ROTTEP details. In meanwhile, until 31st of December, you are eligible, or until the ROTTEP rates are announced, you are eligible for MEIS as it was applicable in the original scheme of 2, 3, or 5%. Looking at the existing MEIS issues, so for or the past MEIS, the MEIS is application to be done in a period of 12 months from the let export order date. And after that, if you do, then there is a late cut or a penalty which is charged. Now, looking at the current situation of COVID, department has clarified or provided some relaxation, where if your Leo date is between 1st February 2019 to 31st May 2019, I repeat, 1st February 2019, and I'm correct, and I know I'm reading it 19, it is no typographical error. Why so? Because the February 19 would mean that the 12 months period of application would end on February 20. The 31st May would mean that the end would have become 31st May 20, meaning between the application period or the time limit would get completed between February 20 and 31st May 20, which is in between the COVID period. Hence, for these shipping bills dated having Leo dated 1st February 19 to 31st May 19, the time limit has been extended from 12 months to 15 months. So instead of 12 months, we have 15 months, which is what is provided for this specific MEIS, for this specific shipments to claim MEIS benefit. Coming to service exports, there is a scheme called SEIS, Service Export from India scheme. Again, there is an application period. Unlike MEIS, it follows an annual period. So again, a situation arises that for application to apply SEIS for the financial year 18-19, the last date would be 31st of March 2020, after which you would be applicable for late cut. Since there was a lockdown, and there is lockdown currently, the time period has been extended for the financial year 18-19 to be up to, or the filing can be done, it is extended up to 31st of December 2020. So you could file, or you can file application for SEIS for the financial year 18-19 up to 31st of March 2020. There will be no late cut. For the financial year 19-20, the list of services for which the SEIS is available has been modified, and it will be separately notified. It is yet to be notified. It will be separately notified as Appendix 3X separately, and only those services will be eligible for SEIS for the financial year 19-20. It has been made to aware that there is a wish thinking, or there is a working, that probably the SEIS scheme should not be continued in the same sense, or maybe it is to be worked around. The government has mentioned that for the financial year 2021, that is effective of 1st April, the decision whether the scheme will continue or not will be separately notified. As on yesterday, I confirm there is no notification. So as and when it will be notified, whether it will continue or it will be changed, we will revert, or it will be made aware to everyone. So as far as SEIS goes, 18-19 you can file up to 31st of December, and for 19-20 you will wait for the Appendix 3X. For 2021 we will wait if the scheme continues to be operational or not. Many of you exporters, and substantially good exporters, have a recognition certificate which is called status holder certificate, popularly called as star, 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 star, and 5 star. So if you are holding that certificate, the certificate has a validity of 5 years or up to 31st of March 2020. That was what the original is. Government has taken a step further to ease the process and ease the procedural aspect of renewing it in this year, because a lot of you or a lot of certificates would be expiring in month of May, June, July, August, as and when they were taken in 2015. The now amendment reads that the status holder certificate is valid for 5 years or up to 31st of March 2021, whichever is later. So for all those who have an expiry of their certificate from April, May, June, July, any period, do not worry. Your certificate or your validity is up to 31st of March 2021. For those who have validity beyond that, don't worry, because that's whichever is later. So for 21, 22, 23, your validity still remains that as per the policy rules. Coming to advance authorization, which is a scheme for import of raw material. There used to be an exemption provided by GST Council on exemption of IGST and compensation cess. This was up to 31st of March. The council has already notified it to be extended up to 31st March 2021. The corresponding DGFT and custom notifications all also have been issued. In the import or in the advance authorization scenario, for your raw material imports and exports of finished goods, there are certain dates which come into effect. For import, typically you have 12 months and then extensions possible. For export, you have 18 months and then extension possible. But there are dates to play with. There are dates to be careful about. Government has given this extension for a period wherever, whether it is validity, that is import related, or export obligation related, if that expiry of the date is between 1st of February 2020 to 31st of July 2020. Remember, 1st February, much before the lockdown, and 31st of July 2020, then automatically, without any application, without any amendment, without any endorsement, the validity will be increased for next 6 months. So typically, if your import or the license is expiring on today, 15th of May, then it is effectively extended for 6 months, and you will have 15th of November as your valid up to license date. Similarly, for export obligation, many exporters have to apply for a no norms or ad hoc norms from the norms committee through headquarters based in Delhi. The norms committee rules were that you could get the validity of the norms for a period of 3 years or up to 31st of March 2020, whichever was later. Now that has been modified to read as 31st of March 2021. So it is valid for 3 years or up to 31st of March 2021, whichever is later. This again gives you an advantage that during this period from April, May up to March, if there is an expiry of your ad hoc norms, you do not have to renew it because it's valid till 31st of March 2021. A duty-free import authorization, which is also part of the policy similar to advance authorization. If the validity there also expires between February to July of 2020, 6 months automatic extension is available there as well. I mentioned to you about the scheme for textiles for chapter 61, 62, 63 called as ROSCTL, rebate of state and central levies and taxes. This scheme was introduced from 7th of March 2019 until 31st of December 2019. There is a special rate, and then from 1st January there's a different rate. There were two different timelines decided for these, specifically for 7th March 19 to 31st December 19, the period that the application should be filed by 31st of June 2020. Now that date has been extended by 31st of December 2020. So you get another 6 months for you to file your application of ROSCTL. If you are importing machines and for the purpose of exports, you are going to use a scheme benefit called EPCG, Export Promotion Capital Goods Scheme. Again, under the scheme, there was a IGST and compensation cess exemption available till 31st of March 2020. GST Council has approved it for another year, 31st of March 2021. DGFT and custom notifications have been issued to that effect. EPCG has various dates. There's a date or a time within which you can import. There is a time after you import, within 6 months, you are required to submit your installation certificate to the DGFT and Customs Authority. There is a time that within 4 years, you have to submit or you have to fulfill the 50% of the export obligation. And then there is a final time limit of 6 years within which you have to complete your entire export obligation. Again, we are talking about dates. The advantage or the benefit or the positive which has been given to you is that from 1st February to 31st of July, if any of the dates are there in between, if you have any expiry or due date, whether it is installation related, whether it is your first block or whether it is your final export obligation, if that due date is between 1st February 2020 to 31st of July 2020, automatic extension of 6 months is available to you. So that is another advantage for an EPCG holder. But imagine if your EPCG is of previous period, a much older period, and you have unfulfilled or you have not been able to do certain compliances and obligations, whether it is your half period of 4 years period block, first block and second block, or your total export obligation, or you have not been able to fulfill your submission of installation certificate. Department, that is DGFT, had kept on issuing notifications or public notice to allow you a one-time condonation to submit those and be in a position to regularize the case. That one-time condonation was expiring on 31st of March 2020. By public notice number 1 dated 7th of April, DGFT has revived this one-time condonation, and without any fees, without any penalty, you could regularize the case on its merit by until 31st of March 2021. So by 31st of March 2021, you can regularize the case in case of you have defaulted or you've not done any of the issues related to EPCG, like block extension or delay of installation certificate or your EO extension. Next, in terms of EOUs, export oriented unit, 100% EOUs are exempted from IGST and compensation cess. That's also been continued for 1 full year, that is up to 31st of March 2021. There's a specific scheme for agro commodities called Transport Marketing Assistance, TMA. These are scheme only for items which are under chapter 1 to 24 and a selective list of items which are not excluded in the annexure 1. The law is that you have to apply for a quarter of export. So 1 quarter period is where you will export, and after the end of the quarter, you will apply within 1 year from the date. Now that means for January, February, March 2019, the end date 1 year would be 31st of March 2020. And for April, May, June, the last date will be 30th of June 2020. Hence, for both this quarter, the last date is now going to be 30th of September 2020. For any incentives you claim from the DGFT, you require to have an RCMC, a membership with council, registration cum membership certificate from an export promotion council. This is valid for a financial year. That which means that you would have to renew it by 1st of April. Most of the councils have done it and moved online, and you could be able to renew it online. But however, the government has directed the department not to ask for a renewed RCMC till 30th of September, and you could renew it once the normalcy is there. So you can still claim without RCMC or the valid renewed RCMC for this financial year, and you could renew it once the normalcy is achieved. For import of steel items under chapter 72, 73 and 86, you require to register and get what is called a SIMS number, Steel Import Monitoring System number. A SIMS number is issued. The SIM number is to be applied at least 15 days prior, and it is valid for next 60 days for the import to come. So 15 days prior and 60 days after, that means 75 days. There are restrictions and there are challenges and there are issues to get the import consignments, though the customs is working 24/7, though the export and import are there, but we understand there are challenges. To mitigate the challenges, all SIMs issued up to 31st of March 2020 will have a validity of 135 days rather than 75 days. So instead of 75 days, the validity will be for 135 days. A majority issue of specific products related to export has been come forth. In fact, I've received so many inquiries, or people have received so many inquiries. They would be dealing in garments, they would be dealing in engineering, but with current situation, there have been demands that whether you could export a PPE product or a mask or any other items. That has been a big issue with most of all of us. Let me give you a clarification on what is the status quo as on date as per the notifications. DGFT, which is the controlling body which issues notifications on the export policies as well as import policy. So for export policy, they issued a notification where the PPE and the mask were restricted or prohibited. Then the notification was modified that except for the PPE and the N95 mask, and there was a list of items which was eligible. So there were clarification that others were freely allowed, only PPE and N95 masks were prohibited. Subsequently, on 19th of March by notification 52, all surgical masks, disposable masks, including 2-3-ply masks are prohibited, which means that the masks of whatever nomenclature you talk about are prohibited and cannot be exported. Ventilators and textile material for masks and overalls are also prohibited by the same notification 52. However, under notification 48, the some items which were relieved, like gloves except NRB gloves, surgical blades, non-woven shoe covers, gas masks, etc., continue to remain freely exportable. So please understand, you'll have to look at specific items. Just do not go with your assumptions of what is allowed and what is not allowed. There's a clear-cut notifications for each of the product. There was issue related to specific API and formulations on medicines. There were 13 APIs and 13 formulations which were originally restricted. Then certain exemptions were given for advanced authorization and SEZ exports. Then out of that, 12 APIs and formulations were removed out of restricted to become free. And then finally, the API, the formulation for paracetamol was also made free. Currently, the only one API, which is paracetamol, continues to be restricted. Rest all out of 13. So typically, if you count 13 APIs and 13 formulations, so out of 26, all 25 items are now free, which were earlier. Only API for paracetamol continues to be restricted. Your ventilators, all types of ventilators, all types of artificial respiratory oxygen therapy apparatus are prohibited. There was a prohibition on sanitizers as well. There is a clarification or an amendment done that only alcohol-based hand sanitizers are now prohibited. There's a prohibition on export of hydrochlorococaine. This is also for SEZs and other things. And finally, there's an prohibition or restriction on export of diagnostic kits. So there is a restriction on diagnostics kits. There's a prohibition on hydrochlorococaine, alcohol-based hand sanitizers, and artificial respiratory and oxygen therapy apparatus or ventilators. They are all been prohibited and restricted. Pharmaceutical exports were supposed to be governed by a track and trace system. This period or this implementation has been extended from the original period of 1st April to be effective from 1st October 2020. When you export to certain countries, there are insistence for a specific certificate of origin so that the buying country gets certain advantage. The buyer has based on the free trade agreement. One of the certificate of origin used to be a European Union GSP, where European Union moved from that GSP, a physical document, to a self-declaration based model called as REX, registered exporter. This REX requires you to register online and then through a local agency of the country approve your registration. In India, the local agency was Export Inspection Agency, DGFT, Textile Committee, and various others. DGFT has clarified that in the current situation, if you register for REX and if you need to get a verification done, that verification of your REX number will be done via email based on the details and documents you provide, and the application on the email based rather than the physical documentation. For other countries, other preferential certificate of origin, the DGFT had already started a portal called as coo.dgft.gov.in, and at least 3 certificate of origins, which is India Chile free trade agreement, the India Nepal under SAFTA, and India Korea SEPA, was already issued online much before. From 7th of April 2020, the system has now added 6 more preferential certificates which refer to India ASEAN, India Japan, SAARC preferential trading agreement, the SAPTA, the APTA, and the India Sri Lanka free trade agreement. So all of these certificates are now issued from the portal coo.dgft.gov.in, and it is completely online digital based format. Moving from DGFT to customs. As an importer, you are required to file a bill of entry within a stipulated period, else you will be required to pay penalty fee or a late fee of rupees 5,000 per day for the first 3 days and then 10,000 subsequently. Considering the current situation and the documents and the details not being able to file very effectively, the government or the customs has waived off the late fee for imports coming from or after 20th March 2020 until further orders. In any case, wherever importer is required to submit bonds, now since the bond or the submission of bond is not practical possible in the lockdown situation, there was circular issued that by following certain procedures, submitting an undertaking, the physical bond may be excluded or temporarily suspended, and in lieu of that, the goods could be cleared and the original bond could be submitted later. The dates were based on the lockdown. We have now an extended update that by circular 23, that the execution of undertaking by the circular, the original circular by the following a procedure, is valid up to 30th May 2020, which means that your original submission of bond will be consequently extended up to 15th of June 2020. We have moved from physical gate pass and out of charge to an electronic based PDF filed barcoded scanned base or QR coded, not barcoded but QR coded out of charge and gate pass, whereby it reduces or makes it seamless movement between the customs and the custodian where the cargo is being held up. This would help the logistic provider, the custom broker, to swiftly clear your cargo without taking any bulky printouts. A recent update in terms of imports from China, which comes under, and there are certain products which comes under the APTA, Asia Preferential Trade Agreement. When they are imported, because there is no original certificate of origin, the preferential origin of certificate of origin available, provisional assessment is done, and you are required to submit a bond and a bank guarantee and a security to a certain extent. Government, considering the situation, have said now or revised that guideline that if you are an AEO with tier 1 and tier 2, if you are a status holder, if you are a manufacturer of items which are mentioned in the serial number 3, If you are an institutional importing pharmaceuticals under Chapter 30, or you are other importers importing certain items, then for the first 4, there is 0% security amount required. For the 5th, which is other importers, you require 25%, and for rest of them, you require 100%. So the reduction from 100% to 25 and to 0 has been done so that it is eased out for people who are able to or who are required to give a surety or a bond for the import from China. Liquidity has been the forefront issue for most economies and most exporters and importers. To address this issue very advisedly and very proactively, customs have taken a call to take up a special refund drive and a drawback dispersal drive, whereby the exporters GST refunds and the drawback refunds, especially to MSME, would be disposed of, and most of them has been disposed of by 30th of April 2020 by various custom houses across India. If you are wanting to import the required goods which are related to the current pandemic, whether it is ventilators or therapeutic respiratory apparatus, whether it is face masks and surgical masks, whether they are PPE equipment, whether they are COVID-19 testing kits, or if you're into manufacturing and want a raw material to manufacture this, then custom has provided you the exemption of basic customs duty and health cess so that you can effectively bring it to India during this pandemic situation. If you are importing goods and storing it in the warehouse or taking goods from the warehouse for import or export purpose, there was an implementation of e-sealing to be organized or to be set up. That e-sealing process has been postponed until 1st of July so that there is a simplified procedure followed as they were followed earlier. There is a second part of the customs and CBIC, the Central Board of Indirect Taxes and Customs, which takes care of GST as well. Now, typically, GST is a forte of a chartered accountant or a GST consultant. But why I'm here to give you an advice is because exporters are not left out from the GST net. They are also required to follow certain compliances. So if you are an exporter, please remember, apart from other things, GST also has your own compliances, or GST has to be complied equally because you are an exporter. There's no exemption for it. One of the standard return which you need to file is GSTR1. It is typically filed by end of 10th of next month. So every 10th of next month is where you are supposed to file GSTR1, and if you do not file the 10th by 10th, then there is a late fee being charged for every day. Department, knowing the constraints and government knowing the issues of the COVID, for the month of March, April and May, and the quarter, if you're filing on quarterly basis, the quarter of 31st of March has said that if you file this cumulatively, all of them by 30th of June 2020, then there will be no payment of late fee to anybody, and there will be no penalty or nothing levied on the late submission of GSTR1 returns. Your GSTR 3B returns, where the payment is done, typically it is done by 20th of next month. For some states it is 22nd, for some states it is 24th. Here there have been two criteria. Ideally, if you don't file it on the due date, from next day onwards you have to pay 18% per annum interest. There has been two criteria being made, that if your turnover in the preceding financial year is more than 5 crores, then if you file within the 15 days of the due date is 20th of next month. If you file it within next 15 days from the due date, another 15 days, then there is no interest, no late fee, no penalty. But you do not file in next 15 days and your turnover is more than 5 crores, then you pay a lower interest of 9% instead of 18%. But if your turnover is less than 5 crores, less than 1.5 crores, then if you pay or if you file your returns by 29th or 30th of June 2020 as per the tabulation, then you neither pay interest, you don't pay any late fee, there is no interest, nothing to be done. So that's the waiver of interest and late fee which is given to you, provided you file by 30th of June 2020 as per the table provided in the notification. There is a challenge with little filing of returns, especially for companies and for others because they require a digital signature, which unfortunately has been stuck either at your offices or with your chartered accountants and their offices. So for companies who are registered under the Companies Act, they are able to, or they will be able to file their GSTR 3B returns if they want to with an OTP based mechanism called Electronic Verification Code EVC from 21st of April till 30th of June. For people who want to file nil return, so the entities which have to file nil return, they can able to take the option of an SMS short messaging service to file their services as well. The annual return, which is to be filed for the financial year 18-19, has also been extended up to, the last date has been extended up to 30th of September 2020. Now, very specific to exporters, that you are required to apply for a letter of undertaking if you want to remove goods without payment of tax. The LUT is valid for a 1 financial year. So all of you had to apply for a new LUT on 1st April 2020 if you want to move or if you want to export goods without payment of tax. Ideally, you would be able to do so without any problem because the entire process is online and it is instantly given to you by way of an ARN number. However, again, a challenge either with digital signature or network or some issue that you are not able to apply. The department has clarified that the LUT will remain valid till 30th of June 2020, and the old LUT, which is for financial year 1920, can be used for exports until 30th of June 2020 without any problem. So exporters having an LUT of 1920 can use the same LUT and export until 30th June 2020, and maybe by that time they'll be in a position to apply for the new LUT, which is for the year financial year 2021. Many exporters refund were stuck due to an error called SB005. This is an error where matchmaking of your invoice on the shipping bill and in your GST returns happens. For whatever reasons, you are unable to edit it, modify it as required. The provision was made available that there could be a submission of a concordance table document to be given manually to the custom formation, and customs were given power to edit and amend it to match with the documents so that the refund could be scrolled out. However, this manual adjustment options had a time limit that the shipping bills up to July of 2019 were only entertained. Government has now extended that benefit up to the shipping bill dates of 31st December 2019. So from August to December, all those shipping bills which were stuck or which had issue of SB005 could be rectified through an alternative mechanism by submitting documents to the customs under concordance A table. I draw your attention to many exporters that there is a modification in the rule 89 which is relevant to the export refund, where the turnover of zero rated supply in the formula has got a slight change which reverts or which adds that it is turnover of zero rated supply is turnover of zero rated supply during the relevant period without the payment of tax, or the value which is 1.5 times of the goods likely to be domestically supplied by the same supplier or as declared by the supplier, whichever is less. So there's a cap of 1.5 times which has been introduced or modified in this definition. A new rule under rule 96B has been added, where if the exporter does not realize the money within the stipulated period under the RBI, then the input credit and the IGST refund which he has taken has to be returned back plus with the interest. However, if RBI writes it off, then the same is not required to be done. A challenge for the application of refund, especially for the input credit, was when you apply for multiple months in the end of the financial year, you couldn't do that because for one financial year and another financial year cannot be merged together. So March and April could not be merged. But there's a practical challenge that you will have a lot of purchase or sales in March and then purchase in March and the sales would happen in subsequent month. To mitigate the problem, there was a Delhi High Court order, which the council has accepted it, and the GST circular has been issued that bunching or clubbing of months within the or across the financial year will be allowed. So now the exporter can file January, February, March, April, May together, or February, April, March, April, or March, April applications together, and there will be no problem. A small clarification on one of the refund processes, where HSN code and SSC code in the annexure has been made compulsory for the ITC refund. Moving further, we have DG Shipping giving couple of orders, and I'm aware that there has been a lot of discussion and talk about it with the exporters community and importers, especially because of the charges being levied. I just want to put the facts across that DG Shipping had issued originally an order number 7 guiding or advising the shipping lines not to charge any detention charge on import and export consignments beyond the free dates. Earlier, the time period was the 22nd of March to 14th of April, the first lockdown. Then there was a notification number 11, which said that it will be up to 3rd of May instead of 14th of April. Similarly, there was a notification for the non-containerized cargo, that is the break bulk and liquid cargo, again advising them not to charge any damage, ground rent, rate fee, storage, and all sorts of other charges. In fact, there was a barrier that no new charge or new way of charging will be imposed beyond the time period for a period up to 3rd of May 2020. A separate DG shipping notification went to the port authorities as well to waive off detention ground rent charges. I'm aware that there is some speculation and some issues and some dispute and some disagreement beyond for the next second lockdown and the beyond time period, but I'm also made to aware that many shipping lines have agreed and many agencies have agreed to provide this waiver of charges. The Reserve Bank of India plays an important role and controls the export import transactions through the AD banks. With introduction of EDPMS, export data processing and management system, which made that if an exporter's outstanding is there for a period more than 2 years, they would be automatically caution listed. This system was postponed for various reasons, and the last date now was 30th of March 2020. So 31st of March 2020 was the last date. However, in the changed circumstances, RBI has further extended this, that the automatic caution listing will be done or it will start only from 30th of September 2020. With challenge, as I mentioned, that we are not only facing challenge domestically, but we are facing challenge globally. There are chances that your buyers may not honor the payment, the buyers may not or delay in the payment, and that should not become a hindrance in the compliance issues or the procedural. It should not add any procedural aspects. To support that to the exporter, the RBI has amended the rule which required that the export realization and repatriation into India should have been within 9 months. Now, for all exports made up to July 31st, 2020, mind you, July 31st, 2020, we are yet to get that. But for all the exports up to July 31st, 2020, the time period for you to get the realization has been increased from 9 months to 15 months. And that's the advantage which an exporter is able to or can be taking on that aspect. Lastly, very recently, practically 2 days back, and DGFT issued a supporting trade notice yesterday, is the reuse or extension or restarting of the scheme of interest equalization for pre-shipment and post-shipment finance in rupee. So an exporter could take and avail the benefit of interest equalization scheme subject to certain conditions. MSME had all these advantages. This scheme was closed, or that end date was 30th of March, 31st of March 2020. RBI has by a circular dated 13th of May 2020 extended it for 1 year, that is from 1st April 2020 to 31st of March 2020. The the same provisions will be continued for another year, and you could, as an exporter, take the advantage of the pre-shipment and post-shipment interest equalization. The Institute of Packaging, for certain has cargoes, certain specific packaging, you require a UN certificate. The IIP has clarified on 9th of May that the UN certification issued by its offices and its regional centers, which have expiry after 25th of March, will be remaining valid till 30th of June, and hence for the dangerous goods exports or for the dangerous goods, they could apply for the necessary certificates of IMDG and ICAO based on the valid UN certificate. Finally, when you export on credit, when your export is on credit, you are required or you are advised to claim or take insurance cover through ECGC. ECGC will assure or insure your credit in case if there's a challenge. Again, compliance plays an important role here, and ECGC has provided that extension for exporters whose date of filing returns, filing extensions, any default notification, anything is anytime now. It will be, time limit has been extended up to 31st of May 2020. So by 31st of May, if you intimate that time limit or the deadline date will not be part of it, or it will not be considered. Your claims or your representations or applications or responses to the claim, the timeline has been extended up to June 2020. And if you are holding a specific shipment policy which was expiring in March 2020, it will automatically be extended up to June 2020. Many cases, there are exports which you have done on a DP terms. The export goods have reached the buyer's country, but buyer has not taken the delivery due to lockdown, and he wants to switch over from a DP term to a credit term. Exporter can do so. So he's allowed to switch from DP to DA, provided the shipment has reached the destination, but the buyer has not cleared it because of lockdown in that country. So this option is also available to the exporters who wish to claim or take their benefit. Ladies and gentlemen, with this, my inputs, I request and wish you a very safe stay at home. And to all of you who wished to join this session and patiently hear me, this is a small note to say thank you. The link to the presentation is right up on the top. It's called the speakersco.com/eximbankindia. We can now take questions and queries if you have on the same. Mr. Kunal, can we take the questions? Should we take the questions now?
Yes, we have a lot of questions coming in,
Yes.
all related to your presentation. So I'll just read out certain questions. In fact, many of the participants are asking for the presentation, which you have already conveyed that you will be sharing it. I'll read out the other questions. With total
Please.
lockdown, the cost of sea freight and air freights has gone very high. How are we supposed to take orders, export orders taken prior to the lockdown? This question has been asked by Mr. Ronald D'Souza.
Mr. D'Souza, well, to be very honest, see, we agree that the freight cost have gone a very, very big differential costing. Now, unfortunately, there is no control on the pricing of a third party. No government, nobody in the world can control what you charge. Similarly, there has been change in the cost of goods as well. So, unfortunately, there is no control on the pricing. The only suggestion which I would always have is you should speak to your buyer, and in many cases I'm sure he also faces and he also knows the challenge, and he will agree to a certain changeover in terms. Now typically, if you are, again, if you are in an FOB kind of a order, you are not paying the freight, then it's a buyer, and it will be other scenario where the buyer will say please don't ship because my freight cost is very high. So similarly, when you are in a CIF or a DDP terms where you are required to do an freight, my suggestion is to discuss openly with the buyer, considering and giving him the clear picture that it's not about 10-20%. It is a very big margin that we are getting hit on, and it is not going to be a practical sense to export with such high value of pricing.
The next question is by Mr. Meet Modi. He's asking how to apply for interest equalization scheme.
Mr. Modi, interest equalization scheme is almost like, you know, banks, RBI giving some percentages and you are getting, so the 3% and the 5% benefit which is given, typically the RBI is going to pay back to your bank. So there are a set procedure in the circular. If you look at my presentation, there is an RBI circular already mentioned, and it will have a link to the previous original circulars. It gives a straight cut guideline to how bank has to do. So please understand, it is not you who has to apply. You have to only inform the bank. The bank will exercise that option, ask you for certain documents for your eligibility, and once that is there, bank has to go to RBI and get that fund, because you will be deducted with that interest. So typically, if your interest rate is 10% and you are an MSME getting a 5% interest subvention, you will pay only 5%. So bank will calculate interest at 5%, and bank will get that balance 5% from RBI under the scheme. That procedure they will do. You are not, you are going to pay only 5% under the subvention.
Okay, there are a couple of more questions from Mr. Meet Modi. He's
Yes.
also mentioned how to apply for the new LUT 1st July onwards.
Sir, you can apply LUT on the GST common portal. There is an option available. If you're a proprietor or a partner, OTP is generated. A very simple process. In fact, you could do it right now, and you will be surprised that practically the amount of time I require you to explain, half of the time is required to apply the LUT. So it is that simple. It is just a 3-step process. You apply, 2 witnesses name, which can be your partner, your directors, your office staff, and it's submitted. The only challenge I feel at the moment which people have to apply an LUT is the digital signature if you are a private limited or limited company. If that is not a challenge, you can apply it today. In fact, you could have applied it yesterday. That's as simple as it is. Yes, sir.
It is also asking how to qualify for 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5-star export house.
So there's a so for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-star export house, I request you to look at chapter 3 of the foreign trade policy. And if I would you know that correctly, we did a master class with Exim Bank a few months back. I'm sure they would be there somewhere on their website. Probably you could look at that and see there is a specific provision under chapter 3 of the foreign trade policy. Just to give you an off the cuff, for 1-star export house, you require $3 million, that is roughly about 18 crores of exports in a period of current year plus previous 3 years. So approximately about 4 years, your exports should be total of $3 million. Then you are eligible for 1-star, and then subsequently 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Okay, there is a question from Mr. Kumar. He's saying that I got 2 export orders at this time. How do I get working capital loan? Very practical question.
I would say actually it has to be addressed by Kunal himself, because he's a banker, but of course he's from the Exim Bank and not from the commercial bank. Friends, couple of things. I'm sure there are a couple of MSME, but again, go back to the interest subvention. There's a pre-shipment finance available. So interest subvention is part of pre-shipment or post-shipment, so that can be considered. I'm made to aware that we had a day before yesterday or yesterday the CGTMS increment of schemes come out as a part of the tranche 1 tranche 2 package of the government. So I think it's with the bank that you are going to sit and negotiate and see around where he can give you some capital push on various segments. But again, it is very individual to individual, very case to case basis, sir.
Yeah. I would also like to mention here that we have a portal called Exim Mitra, which is actually meant for MSME exporters. So there is a tool. So it finds out commercial banks around your area. So if you insert your address, it will give you the banks who are offering working capital loans around your area. So you can approach one of the banks through that. You can
Awesome. I
directly
think
approach the bank through that portal. It is eximmitra.in. So you
that's
can
super.
visit that website. There is this
Okay.
other question from Mr. Akash Pari.
I'm going to
Sorry.
use this information. I'm going to use this information as well at some other platform so that I can inform people. That's a very nice tool, I believe,
Yes.
because
Yes.
telling their exact branch and telling them, okay, go here and get it. I think what better than giving this such a wonderful tool. Excellent.
Yes. Next question is from Mr. Akash Parikh. He's saying, how can
Yes.
merchant exporters or retail exporters get input credit, and want to know what government is doing to encourage merchant exporters or retail exporters?
Sir, as a merchant exporter or any exporter, you have both the option under GST, either to export under LUT and claim the refund of your input credit, or you pay GST and claim refund of IGST. So both option is, there is no differentiation under GST as a merchant or manufacturer. If you are referring to something where you are buying at a lower rate as 0.1 and things, the process is very clear. There's a notification number 4041 where you can buy the finished goods which you are exporting at a 0.1% GST and then export under LUT. So you're almost getting it duty free, GST without any GST, and you're exporting under LUT without any GST. In terms of what is government doing to export, give you merchant exporters any benefit? So there are incentives which are available across for manufacturers as well as for merchant exporters. So there is no yes, we thrive, or there is a focus on manufacturing because we want that the goods should be value added. But there are schemes like MEIS, like duty drawback, which is available even for merchant exporters. But any specific at the moment, I don't see it. But we'll have to see what comes up at near future with specific at merchant exporters.
Our next question is from Ms. Aparna Kulkarni. She asks that what happens if exporters are not able to fulfill their export obligations under EPCG scheme going forward because of cancellation of export orders or due to protectionism measures, that is factors beyond the control of the exporter due to the pandemic?
Ms. Kulkarni very rightly said that we are expecting, and this is a challenge. Unfortunately, I am not a prediction person, or I cannot predict the future, but I agree to you. But let me give you an assurance. What I understand from the thing is there are discussions happening at the government level to see some waiver or to see some amnesty scheme kind of a thing. I'm not guaranteeing you nor I'm committing anything, but what I see is, yes, this is a genuine challenge. Giving an extension of 6 months is not probably going to work for many people who are in the last phase of their EPCG and obligations. So we have to wait and watch how things come out. But I understand this is a very genuine challenge, and what I understand is that the government is working hard on these issues, and there should be some resolution coming forward in near future.
There are certain questions related to the equipment and medical supplies. So Mr.
Yes.
Aman Julka asked about sanitizers. I think you've already explained during your presentation. And Mr. Gautam Datta, he's written, kindly advise if there is any deadline on prohibition of export notification of PPEs and N95 masks. So I think if you can just mention again.
So both of them, whether it is N95 or the sanitizers. So first of all, the sanitizer is very clear now. It is only alcohol-based hand sanitizer. The PPs and N95 mask, or any mask to that extent, 2-3 ply mask, all have been prohibited. Now there is no notification, there is no deadline. It is prohibited, is prohibited. There is no time limit that after so date it will become free. It will only become free when the government re-notifies it from prohibited to free. So unless they don't do it, whether it happens tomorrow or whether it after 2 months, we'll have to wait till that. So there is no deadline of a notification of a prohibition.
Yeah, the next question is from Mr. Sajan Karale. He says,
Yes.
is there any scheme or package for exporters under the relief fund announced by the government? I think he's referring to the recent.
The recent one, yeah, the one, in fact, the third one, which is going to be announced by Madam right now at 4 p.m. So, well, to be very specific, there's no specific directly for exporters, but until what has been announced in last couple of days, the MSME definition, which is being changed, will indirectly help exporters to become MSME, and if they are eligible, and then that would mean that you will be eligible for certain advantages, including the interest subvention and stuff like that. But if you say specifically in bold letters exporter, I don't think so at the moment it is there. But let's wait for the other tranches to come. Maybe something could be coming today or tomorrow. Let's hope.
There is another question again on interest equalization scheme. I think you've already addressed to that.
Yes, money is.
The other question is from Mr. Manjiar from Injectoplast. He's asking, does Exim Bank still offer marketing support to Indian manufacturers? So I think I'll address to that question. Yes, we do offer marketing support. We have a program called Marketing Advisory Services where we help Indian manufacturers and suppliers find overseas markets. So you can visit our website and contact us, contact our nearest office, and we will help you with that. Or you can write to us at ccg@eximbankindia.in. We will address to your query. There is another question from Mr. Rizul Rai. He's asking, I would like to ask steel import. We are getting offers from outside, but we are not sure whether we are ready to import. How much time this will take?
I'm sorry, I did not understand the question, but if you're asking whether it is allowed or not allowed, please be rest assured the export and import of all commodities, essential or non-essential, everything is allowed. There is no restriction typically, except for the export, which we have talked about for the specific products. So if you talk about even import, there is no restriction. There could be some delay here and there. Now, I believe your question is from the demand and other aspects of how we will cope it up. Your guess and my guess is one and the same. We don't know.
Okay, the other question is from Mr. Pankaj Mehta, very relevant. He's asking how Atmanirbhar scheme will benefit new exporters.
Well, we have to see the fine prints, but the focus which is being said, I mean, to be right or wrong, I do not know, but then to a certain extent is, when you have certain chips down, let's say that global demand not being there, you will also have certain domestic demand, because that's what is the Atmanirbhar talking about, being local and vocal about it. So maybe a part of your business may become local, or there could be a demand from local, and at the same time, you will have demand growing from overseas market as well. So what happens is, like typically, if you heard about it, there's a case where airline industry says, to put a flight on a ground is more expensive than just to keep on flying them. So similarly, you might have a situation that you are not able to get new export orders, but you might get some local orders which will keep your machine running. And then when you actually get the good export orders, you have got their experience of trying new, testing new products, seeing the new demands. It will help you grow into exports. But very specifics to exports, we'll have to wait and watch for all the schemes to come and roll out, and then take a final call.
Mr. Miraj Ahmed has a very specific query. He is asking, we are in the process of import from China and then export to Bahrain directly without landing into India. How can we deal with the payment for the same?
Mr. Ahmad, this is called merchanting trade under the RBI. You have to refer to a document called Master Directions on Import, and there's a paragraph called C13 which gives you a guideline on how this will be done. If the product is allowed to be imported or exported into India, though you are not going to import physically, but if it is allowed, then from one bank you can do both the transaction, that is buy from China, which is called as import leg, and export to Bahrain with a positive value addition. It is allowed under merchanting trade.
Okay. Next question is again from Mr. Rajesh Meshram. He is
Yes.
asking, my first question is, in DGFT notification, there is two policy mentioned. First is present policy, second is revised policy. So which policy has to be followed? Kindly guide.
The revised policy. So you're referring to the foreign trade policy. Yes. So the FTP 1520, when the policy came, there was a mention right at the upfront in 2015 that a policy which was originally in, the common practice was it would be reviewed every year. But in 2015, there was a very clear guideline that they will be not reviewing every year. They will be reviewing only in the midterm. So after 2.5 years. So in 2017, after 2.5 years, ideally it was actually in month of July it had to be reviewed, but July we had GST, so it was got reviewed in December. So the updated version, see, remember the policy is the same, it is an updated version. So that's why I think you are referring to that. So you have to refer to the new policy, that is the second policy, updated version, effective from, I believe it is 5th of December 2017.
There is another question from Ms. Suchitra. She's asking, considering extension given in interest equalization scheme, can bankers add new exporters into the IES scheme, or the benefits will be available only to the existing customers?
No benefit, there is no restriction of who will get the benefit. If you are an exporter and if you have got the order and you want pre-shipment finance, interest equalization scheme is available. There is no cap or a restriction on new or old. Now it's only about how the loan, so the internal bank restrictions of funding, collateral fee or non-collateral fee or getting your limits, that's a separate story. But there is no restriction from the RBI, or it will be only for the existing or a non-existing. It is a pre-shipment finance in rupee. If pre-shipment is available to you, the rate is where the issue is. So here the advantage is by the rate, that instead of the existing rate, you will get a reduced rate.
Mr. Puneet Damani is asking, is there any global guideline on relaxation on demurrages and detention charges from ports and shipping line in these times?
No, sir, at the moment not. I mean, trust me, yes, this is a big talk and this is big discussion, but I mean, to be all fairness, uh, we have to see on both the sides. So let's also see from the business, their side also. How long are you going to keep on getting waivers? Today, when I speak at 15th, even the DG shipping deadline of 4th May has gone past. We are almost 10 days ahead of that. So 10 days damage will be a big amount for many importers. So there is no global guideline. It's a situational thing. Again, I say the customs and the port authorities are working. So there are another challenges of that they say okay, we are working in this pandemic situation. There is a cost impact there as well. So it is a difficult challenge to say any standard guideline will be available. Not necessary, not possible, sir.
Okay, the other question from Mr. Rajesh Mishram is that if the DGFT notification, if product description mentioned ventilator, that is 9018 HS code, and in the description defibrillator is not mentioned, it is also HS code 9018. So can we export other items except ventilator when it comes to HSN 9018? So I think there is confusion of the HS code that he is referring to.
Yeah, but I believe so. So here we have to exactly look into it, but I'm not sure what is defibrillator. But if you look at the notification, there's a very clear the guideline says all ventilators and all there is a word used. Let me just quickly go back to that. There's all artificial, there's a word used, artificial respiratory systems. So I think that takes care of everything under that terminology. So you'll have to look into that and then take a call whether it is eligible or not. Let me just quickly yeah, so it says uh, the word uses, see, the prohibition is on all ventilators to all include any artificial respiratory or oxygen therapy apparatus or any other breathing appliance or device. So now if this is a breathing device, it comes up under it. So whatever you name, you call, it doesn't matter whether you call a ball pen or an ink pen. अगर वो banned है तो prohibited है तो prohibited है.
The other question is by Mr. Nayana Mandke. The question is, rule
Yes.
of 89 recently introduced is only for filing refund under ITC. Refund not under IGST refund. Please clarify.
Yeah, so the 1.5%, the clarification is part of the rule 89 sub rule 4, where the definition has been modified. It is not under IGST, obviously, because IGST is rule 96.
Okay. Then again, very specific query by Mr. Shri Charan. He's asking, sir, we are importer of terracotta fabric from China. Can we start importing at this time? If it is okay for importing, what is the precaution to be taken for disinfecting the product before entering?
So all basic precautions which you can think about in terms of the product, because I'm assuming you're talking about is fabric, so it should also not happen that the pesticides which you use on fabric remains on the fabric, so it gets absorbed, so then nobody's going to buy your terracotta fabric. But apart from that, whatever basic best precautions required to make sure that it is coming disinfected without any COVID issues is to be taken, but otherwise there is no issue. See, the challenge is not about importing. I think the challenge is the demand here. So you have to see, import ho gaya, you've got the goods. Now how are you going to disseminate or distribute it here? So if you have a buyer, if you have a consumption here, I don't see a problem of importing and using it from any country. Now there is no restriction, or there's no specific that China is only going to bring you COVID. Any country you import, you have to take care of all those aspects. Yes.
Okay, I think there are a lot of couple of very specific questions, and specific to the business of the exporters, which
Yes.
I think can be addressed offline. If they can send us the questions on our email ID, we can address to them. Which
Awesome.
I'm just checking if there is some question which will be relevant to everyone.
Sure.
Okay, there is one question from Mr. Manish Goel. He's asking, is there some website where we can check our current status of RBI caution listing? This will help us get old pending shipping bills cleared.
Manish ji, unfortunately, RBI doesn't disclose that list to anybody. There are only two agencies. One is your bank, and secondly, if you are registered with FEO, the Federation of Indian Exporters Organization, both of them have an access to it. So if you want to know what are your pending shipping bills, a very simple is you can talk to your bank, and they will from the EDPMS give you. The good part now has happened is that the banks are able to share or see the entire list of pendency, not necessarily only their banks. So if you are banking with multiple banks, they will get the list of all your pending shipping bills, irrespective of which bank are you banking with. So that can help you in terms of finding out which are your shipping bills which are outstanding.
Okay, I think these are the questions we have for now. So other questions we will entertain when we receive it on email. So I would
Sure.
like to thank all the participants who joined us today. We had a very nice active participation from all of you. And I would also like to thank again Mr. Mihir Shah for helping us and giving us his insights on the various notifications which have been issued throughout this lockdown period. Before we sign off, I would just like to again remind all of you that on 5th of June, we have another webinar coming on our Ubharte Sitare program. It will be at 3 p.m. and the details of that webinar will soon be on our website and our social media handles. And if you have any feedback and any queries, you can please send it to us on ccg@eximbankindia.in. Thank you once again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.